They look at Bitcoin as a bit of a threat, a lot of politicians.
Really?
Yes,
Okay.
but that's not a lot of them. A handful of politicians waking up and realizing that they need Bitcoin more than Bitcoin needs them, but Bitcoin doesn't need the politicians. Bitcoin will be fine, it will survive. Gold is not our competitor. Actually, gold is it's almost our benchmark. The higher gold goes, the higher Bitcoin will go. This is the issue that facing most of the sovereign countries around the world is that, are they really that sovereign? Do they actually have full control of their finances?
You're telling me it's not hard to get a meeting with a politician, but it's very difficult for them to act upon it. So what do you think has been the most difficult thing for you that you've experienced?
Yeah, that's...
Could we go down this rabbit hole?
If we want to.
I would love to go down this rabbit hole. Yeah, welcome to another episode of Simply Bitcoin IRL. We're here in the beautiful Lugano. Look at the lake, the clouds parted. It's been spectacular. This is the first interview I've ever done with His Royal Highness Prince Philip of Serbia. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me.
Did I get that correct?
You got it correct, yeah.
It's been quite embarrassing because before we went on air, I kept calling him dude and bro, and I was like, oh my God, what am I doing?
I'll allow you.
I appreciate it. Prince Philip, you are the Chief Strategy Officer at Jan3.
That's right.
What made you want to do that?
Well, I got into Bitcoin. We spoke about this earlier on. I got into Bitcoin 2017, was working traditional finance. And back then it was just introduced to me as an inflation hedge, something like an investment. And it was very interesting back then, but I also got distracted by other altcoins, shitcoins and stuff. And it wasn't until 2020, 2021 when the whole COVID thing happened and all the incredible things that happen in the markets, I started paying attention more to Bitcoin. I started studying it more and realized that this is sitting on something that's going to change the world. So I became a maxi by 2020, 2021, and I got rid of all the alts I had, which wasn't that many at that time. And I wanted to dedicate my life to Bitcoin. And then it wasn't until in 2020, I moved back to Serbia with my wife and my son at the time. We were living in London and I was working traditional finance there. And when COVID hit, my job went online and I realized after 2 weeks of doing this, working from my desk in my bedroom, I could be doing this anywhere in the world. And I thought, hey, let's move back to Serbia now. So we moved back by June 2020. My wife and I were working on the PR of my family. We're just trying to do what we can to visit the country, visit people who are people who invited us all over the country to get to know us. And the idea of monarchy is still very much alive in Serbia. And one thing led to another, and we got invited onto the biggest talk show in Serbia early 2022. And that's when the host, who I got to know a few days before, asked me if it's a good time to talk about crypto. And that's when I interrupted him and said, no, it's not about crypto, it's all about Bitcoin. And then talked for about a minute or two about Bitcoin. And that clip, of course, went viral on Bitcoin, Twitter, YouTube, and all that. And next thing I know, I'm being invited to Miami to the conference in 2022. And I'm meeting the likes of like Safety, Samson, and Samson Mao, who just started Jan3, was like, hey, Philip, starting this company Jan3, would you like to work for us? We're going to be trying to orange pill nation states. I was like, yeah, I'm in, count me in. And that's when I started transitioning out of my traditional financial job and finally went into something that I'm more passionate about.
Yeah, and I feel like, you find a mission in it, right? You find a mission in it, you find the dedication, you're like, wow, Bitcoin truly does. When it clicks, right? It takes a little bit to click, but when it clicks, we're like, this movement is bigger than myself, right? And I could actually make the world a better place, because you always have that idea as people, is like, I can make the world a better place, but can you, right? With Bitcoin, it's this amazing technology where we're all winners, like we all win, right? Like I love Max Kaiser's way of phrasing it. It's hysterical to me. It's like Larry Fink, Bitcoin employee of the month, and it's because Larry Fink's going on Legacy Financial Media and he's, preaching Satoshi's gospel. And now I'm sitting here with a prince, right? And he is the Chief Strategy Officer at Jan3, right? Which is their mission, the Samson's mission, your guys' mission is to, spread nation-state Bitcoin adoption.
That's it.
Which is
speed up hyper-Bitcoinization.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Bitcoin is it's a grassroots strategy. It's bottom-up. It's decentralization at its best. But obviously, orange pilling nation states, presidents, ministers, and those corporations and things like that, it's a top-down approach to that. So that's what Samsung realized that there could be a niche there, and to give Bitcoin some credibility. So if you're have a meeting with a president, a prime minister, so forth, and have a picture with him, that actually helps to get people to talk about Bitcoin more, and it might change a few minds, get them onto understanding about Bitcoin.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things that I've noticed, Prince Philip, is after Nayib Bukele made his famous announcement at Bitcoin 2021, I was anticipating many more countries following the next year, right? Because I saw the momentum, and the next year happened and didn't really plan out that way. Like there wasn't that many announcements. There wasn't that many countries following suit. And I couldn't put two and two together. And it wasn't until El Salvador got a notification from the IMF regarding, you know, hey, if you want this loan, you got to like not make Bitcoin legal tender, that I came to the realization, oh my God, the IMF has dealings with like half the world. And you know for a fact, they're telling all these countries behind the scenes, if you want these SDRs, you're not getting any type of you can't make Bitcoin legal tender at all. So it's just almost like as if it pulled the rug. It took the momentum out of this thing that was naturally occurring already in El Salvador. And I want to get your thoughts on how you guys are combating that.
Well, El Salvador was an interesting case. At the beginning, as you said, it was a bit of an outlier, a little bit like MicroStrategy or Strategy today, that they were the first movers into it. And it happened that Strategy is much more successful, and not to the constraints of a nation state like El Salvador. El Salvador, as we later learned, as you correctly said, had other compromises. And this is the issue that facing most of the sovereign countries around the world, is that, are they really that sovereign? Do they actually have full control of their finances? And when you learn about Bitcoin, you understand that maybe they don't. So when at Jan 3, we've had some interesting conversations, and to get in a meeting with a politician is not that difficult. For them to get to understand Bitcoin is very difficult, but you have to figure out how it can help them. And I think now, for getting people to pay attention to Bitcoin, it's about how they can understand that Bitcoin is a long-term strategy, and I think mining is one area that we're trying to get into as well. So in how you can use budget-neutral ways of how to stack Bitcoin that doesn't really interfere with the compromises the countries have already. So hopefully in the future we'll be doing more of those. And this is something that we see a lot of nation states, when they adopted Bitcoin, they've adopted it through mining. The other area that we're seeing is actually just having no capital gains tax. That in a way is adoption, I would say. So in this country we're in right now, Lugano, for example, in 2022, the Plan B strategy of having a lot of terminals here in Lugano accepting Bitcoin was a huge eye opener, given that Switzerland is a country that's almost least likely to adopt Bitcoin given its financial stability. But then you see other countries like UAE as well, who are quite ahead. Of course, there's a lot of old shit coining happening over there, but you know, they have a bit of a tax haven situation there. So the next stage right now is for countries is to realize that Bitcoin is the ultimate reserve. And we've seen gold rising right now, and I think that's a good thing, that gold is not our competitor. Actually, gold is it's almost our benchmark. The higher gold goes, the higher Bitcoin will go. And we want gold to go as high as possible, because that means that Bitcoin will actually meet and actually surpass gold in the future.
Yo, I want to tell you about the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack, bitcoinwell.com. What makes Bitcoin Well different? What makes it unique? It's an automatic self-custody Bitcoin on-ramp. What does that mean? That means that when you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, as soon as the funds clear, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address, which perfectly aligns with the Simply Bitcoin ethos, because after all, self-custody is the revolution. By the way, if you go to bitcoinwell.com/simply, as soon as you make your first purchase, you get 3 opportunities to win up to 1 million Satoshis just for signing up and buying a little bit of Bitcoin. Seems like a win-win. What are you waiting for? Go to bitcoinwell.com/simply today.
What do you think has been the biggest difficulty? You're telling me it's not hard to get a meeting with a politician, but it's very difficult for them to act upon it. So what do you think has been the most difficult thing for you as Chief Strategy Officer of Jan 3 that you've experienced?
Yeah, that's getting them to understand Bitcoin. You know, it's not something that you have to have an open mind.
Like in terms of like they just don't want to, like they don't want to listen, or they're a little bit older, like their incentives are not aligned?
Of course, incentives not aligned. And
Okay.
how to say it is like they are doing well in a world that doesn't need Bitcoin in their world, and they're sort of protecting what they do best in. And it's not doing that. They're not being nefarious about this at all. They're just doing what they are paid to do and to feed their families, their friends and family. So Bitcoin comes along and it kind of tests that. And so they look at Bitcoin as a bit of a threat, a lot of politicians.
Really?
Yes,
Okay.
but that's not a lot of them. Some of them will now realizing that we haven't, since it's over here in Switzerland, we have many politicians around the world, not many, a handful of politicians waking up and realizing that they need Bitcoin more than Bitcoin needs them. But Bitcoin doesn't need the politicians. Bitcoin will be fine. It will survive. So I think that given that the how financial systems are developing around the world, and inflation is persistent even in the most stable countries, I think now people are starting to wake up.
That's really interesting. So you kind of confirmed the smoking gun, which is basically they're just not incentivized to understand it, how the current system is structured. And it's interesting you say that, Priscilla, because it's like, supposedly it's a government by the people, for the people. But I think the printers misalign those incentives, and it no longer becomes a government by the people, for the people. It becomes a government for the government, by the government.
Well, that's because you start to question democracy and how the incentives of a democracy align to help those who get those into power. So through lobbying and favors being done. And
could we go down this rabbit hole?
If we want to.
I would love to go down this rabbit hole. So I mean, oh man, touchy subject. So there's trade-offs between the political systems, right? And I think there's a very famous book, right? It was Democracy, the God That Failed
by Hansom and Hopper, yes.
And I think in the West, we have this idea that democracy is the end all be all without looking at the trade-offs. And I think it was like originally like Franklin that said this, but it was basically like his prediction for what was going to happen eventually in the United States politically was like, look, it's just going to turn into a popularity contest of who can basically get into power so they can control the treasury. And if they control the treasury, they can buy the votes, and then they could buy the votes and they can remain in power, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you see that a lot in the West.
I think it was John Adams.
It was John Adams.
I think it was John Adams. He was a big reader, and I think he read into Polybius's anacyclosis, which is like a 7 or 8 stage cycle of how civilizations progress and fail, essentially.
Yeah.
To sum it up very quickly, is you start with, I say, anarchy in a nice sense, but out of the anarchy you get order, where you get a king, you get a strong man, a king, and for a while it's good. The king breeds other kings, it's a good hereditary line, but then you get bad kings along the way, and then that breeds tyranny. So from monarchy, you get tyranny. And then that tyranny, you have people who rise up, and that's mainly the aristocracy who rise up, take down that king, and then you get an aristocracy rising up. But then the aristocracy, they become corrupt, they become fat cats, they do favors for each other, the people start to suffer, and then that turns into like people who have a lot of money.
I know who you're
have a lot of money,
I know what you're talking about.
What I'm talking about.
The oligarchs.
The oligarchy. Why did I forget that?
Boom.
There.
Yeah.
So from aristocracy, you have oligarchy, which is the bad form of aristocracy.
Smiling in the background.
You have the bad form of aristocracy with oligarchy. Then the people rise up, and then you get democracy. And then after democracy gets corrupted and stuff, then you end up having, well, we kind of talk about, end up with mob rule or chaos. And then from that, the cycle repeats itself, and then you'll get a strong man again, a strong leader, and then you'll get some sort of monarchy again.
I'm at that point, dude.
And I think that's why people very much liken America to the Roman Empire, the way it's structured. And they try to find the bestable pieces, but it doesn't last forever.
That's the problem, is that originally America, and I give it credit, like the way that it's structured, like the founding fathers, like they knew, like they absolutely knew that absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Exactly.
And they tried so hard to put in so many checks and balances, but you could see how much it's like eroded over time.
And this is exactly Hopper's book.
And I think it's
Democracy.
It's human nature.
He has a great chapter on that. Yeah.
It's human nature, right? But then you're getting to this point where it's just, honestly, you see the moral decay in society, and then you see the chaos. Not here in Switzerland. This never happens in Switzerland. They've perfected everything. But other than Switzerland, you kind of start to see that. I think in the United States, I've never seen the political violence. Never. Like I've never seen the political violence that we're experiencing today.
Yeah.
And it's very sad. It's tragic. And I honestly, to kind of loop this back in to connect it with Bitcoin.
Yeah, I was going to connect this.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect, right? We're in sync now. We're reading each other's minds. I love this. I think a lot of this comes down to the fact that the money's broken, which fuels wealth inequality. Well, the wealth inequality then fuels political instability. And then that's when people start to revolt and say, hey, WTF, what's going on?
Right.
So,
and just as we talk about Bitcoin, the sun rises.
I know, right? It's perfect. The camera guys are probably freaking out because all the lighting's different.
Well, the light's
now.
different. But I would say, for the anacyclosis, which is not a perfect absolutely perfect, but it's quite a good description of what happens, how civilizations fall over time. One thing that could have helped smoothen things out or stop the decay from one stage to another is if the money was not broken, if the money was hard like Bitcoin. Yes, they had hard money back then, but back then hard money like gold or silver, and they had other forms of money, were easily gamed.
Do you need liquidity without having to sell your Bitcoin? For more than 6 years now, Ledn has been the trusted source for Bitcoin-backed lending, with transparency, security, and trust at their core. Backed by $9 billion of Bitcoin loans funded and over 1,000 5-star reviews. I absolutely love these guys because of their flexibility. You can pay back your loan whenever you want. And there are no monthly payments, so you pay at the end of the term. You get lightning fast access to capital. As soon as you send your Bitcoin as collateral, you get the cash into your account within 18 hours. Unlock the liquidity of your Bitcoin without having to sell your Bitcoin. Simply Bitcoin viewers get 0.25% off their first loan by using the link in the video/podcast description. What are you waiting for? Check out Ledn today.
So what countries have you found success in specifically?
I don't think there is any successful countries.
So you have Prospera, right?
Prospera, I mean, it's a free city in
Madeira.
No, Prospera is a free city in Honduras. They're trying to become the next Singapore, really. You had in the medieval, I wouldn't call it medieval, but in the Renaissance period, you had essentially free cities like Venice and what's that lovely city down in the middle?
Venice?
Florence. Yes.
Okay. Beautiful city.
And they had these small, they had their own hard money standard there, and they had their own coinage, and it's sort of art and society flourished under these small cities. And the modern equivalent to that is Singapore. So that's why a place like Prospera is trying to replicate. And there's other examples around the world. Madeira could be an example as well, but the president, he gets Bitcoin, but I don't think he fully understands Bitcoin to really put it. I mean, they are autonomous to Portugal. They're kind of constrained, but he has opportunity there to push it further. Yeah. He's a good guy, and I think he can...
So then what's the nenext step?
The next step is, if we're looking at the Hoppian,
keep going.
If we're looking at the Hoppian prediction, is that what makes society work best is when we have smaller jurisdictions, smaller populations. Just like how Germany, for example, was in the 19th century when it was at its best, was when there was 43 or something like 43 different kingdoms, small areas, and they're all competing with each other.
So it's city-states.
Yeah, city-states. And when you have smaller jurisdictions, you have more homogeneous populations. And if you have a democracy there, it's the general public are much more informed. Even the big supporters of democracy in the 17th and 18th and the 17th and 18th century, like Descartes, was saying that democracy would not work beyond a certain population, over 100,000 people. And look what we have now. We have democracies that are in the hundreds of millions even.
Yeah.
So it's a system that's always going to fail, and I hate, it's a very tough subject to talk about.
Well, it's taboo.
It's taboo,
right?
But I don't think it should be.
It's taboo, but I think that if you read enough about history, and then I think Bitcoin expedites this process.
Yes.
You realize the extreme lack of efficiencies in government today, and it kind of blows your mind a little bit, And I remember I was, Svetsky, right?
Yes.
So we were having a conversation, and the way that he phrased it, and again, this is so taboo. You cannot talk about this because it goes against the consensus, basically, that was established in the last century. And this originally, by the way, this is how the original vision of the United States was, which was the stakeholders were the ones who had votes. You didn't have universal suffrage.
Yes.
And then it's such a taboo subject that you bring that up and you're like, what do you mean? Like, that's crazy. Like, how can, whatever. But if you think about it, it's like, look, if you own a business or you own a building or you employ a bunch of people, your vote is equal to someone that perhaps is not as productive in society, right? Your votes are equal. What's going to happen eventually? The person on one side is eventually going to vote to take away things from the other side, which is what I think you're seeing in the modern nation state with these giant welfare systems underneath them that they can't really afford. They pay for it through money printing, which, by the way,
that exacerbates the situation much further because favors are easier to be given out afterwards.
And it actually enriches the very wealthy, and it makes the poor even poorer while they're getting convinced that they're actually getting free things. It's a very inefficient system. And I love the way that Svetsky put it, because Svetsky was basically like, look, when there's a king, he knows he's on the line, right? So I thought that was really interesting.
The king has accountability, more accountability, because he has to protect his lineage, his grandchildren, grandchildren, or as long as possible. So he's incentivized to take as least today and leave as much in the future.
Yeah.
And in that respect, he has a very strong incentive to have his very strong private property rights.
Yeah. So yeah, it's sorry, the sun is destroying me right now. No, it's 100% true. And I never saw it before Bitcoin. Bitcoin really was the one that really kind of opened my eyes to there needs to be a better form of government. I think right now, the form of government that we have in society it's not a representation of the people, even though that's what they sell us on it.
No, I agree. It's and a touchy subject. I'll be careful what I say, but after reading a lot of Austrian economics and people like Hopper and Rothbard, you realize that natural order really has a position, and thanks to Bitcoin, that can actually happen. I don't think you'll ever get rid of the state completely, but there's definitely a trend happening right now where people want less state. Yeah, it's encouraging to people who are waking up to this. I think the most important thing is that, like Hopper would say, and I always refer to him as he's also a bit of a conservative as well. He understands that family and faith are very essential. Like family is the unit of civilization. It's like if the family is taken care of, then civilization does better. And the idea that if you can, like capital formation comes from people saving money.
Yeah.
And when people save money, that empowers them, but also it lowers the time preference of their community in general as well.
Yeah.
And this is something that's been eroded completely away by money printing.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, sat123.com. Sovereignty isn't just about your money, it's about your communications too. When the grid goes down, most people go dark. Cell towers fail in hurricanes, cyber attacks, and blackouts. But satellite phones, they don't rely on local infrastructure. Iridium has 77 satellites in orbit, giving you a direct line anywhere in the US, even offshore. If you hold your own Bitcoin keys, you should hold your own comms too. Sat123.com also has everything you need to start building your Bitcoin citadel. Starlink, battery backups, Faraday bags to protect your hardware wallets, and much, much more. It's a one-stop shop for anyone serious about resilience and off-grid independence. Stay connected, stay independent, stay sovereign. Go to sat123.com/simply today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store.
Would you even say that it's like conservative ideas? Because, before the 20th century, that was how things worked for forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. It was really like, you could say a Russian Revolution, or French Revolution.
I was
really,
going to say that.
French Revolution really is the one.
I think it was the 1700s French Revolution. What was
the Enlightenment, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh my God. So yeah, the French Revolution really kind of kicked things off, but then it was like the Russian Revolution, then the World Wars, right? That really ended like a lot of the Christian monarchies.
They ended a lot of monarchies, and they pushed for democracies.
Yeah.
And one of the theories was that those that were surrounding the kings, the intellectual people that were surrounding the kings, felt like they weren't getting compensated or treated fairly. So they advised kings, they advised monarchies to go to take the more democratic route, so they could get their power themselves.
Yeah.
And then whatever happened in the First World War, no one's actually quite 100% sure how the First World War actually started, what was going on there, but it feels like there was a big spiritual battle there. And after the First World War, we had a few monarchies monarchies, and subsequently the years after that that were abolished, including the monarchy, my family's monarchy as well. And it felt like that was almost done on purpose.
It totally was,
because democracies, republics and democracies, and even a constitutional monarchy, which is still better than I say a republic, is still open to manipulation from outside.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have a monarchy, it's easier. The monarchies, it's harder to infiltrate the monarchy. They are more independent.
Of course. And then they have a sense of responsibility, right?
This is exactly what happened in the Second World War when our monarchy was abolished.
And lineage. But to kind of tie that up with World War I, this is one of my favorite conversations of the day, by the way. I'm a history junkie. So the Federal Reserve was established 1913.
Yeah.
And World War I started literally 2 or 3 years later, right?
What kind of started as a monarchical war ended up as a fiat democratic war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think if the central bank in the United States, it wouldn't have, World War I, the United States wouldn't have got involved.
So I think this is one thing to read. Safety's latest book, it's called The Gold Standard. And what would have happened if the Federal Reserve didn't continue with this plan and we were still on the gold standard? And you'll find it's quite a good read. I read it a little bit before it came out in the very early days, and it has an alternative history.
Oh, really?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, cool. I got to check it out.
It's fantastic. It's a really good read. As a history buff, like as I can see that you'll really enjoy it. And
I have to check it out.
The destruction of the money printer that was the ultimate money printer created by the Fed as the Federal Reserve is so destructive, and that if that did not continue, we would have saved so many lives and we would be living a much better.
Oh, everyone would be living a much better life. It is despicable that my generation, the millennial generation, the Gen Z generation, even their own propaganda is getting to the point where they're saying you'll own nothing and be happy, right? So it's getting absurd. The excuses are suffering from inflation themselves, right? But the fact that the world has gotten so much more prosperous, so much more wealthy, and the fact that there's generations that are poorer than their parents, something's wrong, right? Like the equation, the math ain't math,
Exactly.
right? And it all boils down to the money. And I think that's something that Bitcoiners fundamentally know.
Price of tomorrow, that's
of course.
technology on a deflation, money, inflation.
Yeah.
It should be going with deflation.
And I'm so happy I got to interview a prince today because, we're going down this like history rabbit hole, just kind of connecting the dots, government, money. But if you go to the root cause, it's literally fiat. It's the central banks that really mess things up. And it's crazy because there was so much resistance for so long, but eventually there was just a capitulation. I don't know what happened.
Well, it infected all institutions and everything got corrupt, and institutions lost their strength. And education, for example, became indoctrination camps.
Yeah.
And it weakened people.
Yeah.
And it stopped people from figuring out the truth. And now in these bad times, we're creating hard men again. So hopefully we're hard enough to get out of this.
We're going to create good times again.
Yeah.
Well,
hopefully our children will do that as well.
Prince Philip, it's been an honor. Thank you so
pleasure.
much. I really enjoyed this conversation. It's one of my favorite of today. I really like history, so.
Well, let's do it again.
Let's do it again, man.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
Thanks.
it.